President Donald Trump announced on November 30th that he is willing to release the results of the MRI scan he underwent in October, offering unexpected transparency amid growing questions about his health. Speaking to journalists aboard Air Force One, Trump described the October MRI results as perfect, insisting there was nothing concerning in the examination. The president was returning to Washington, D.C., after spending the Thanksgiving holiday at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. When asked if he would make the medical findings public, he responded without hesitation, "If you want to have it released, I'll release it." He added almost casually that he had no idea which specific part of his body had been scanned. "It was just an MRI," Trump said, shrugging off the growing speculation. "What part of the body? It wasn't the brain because I took a cognitive test and I aced it." Welcome viewers to my channel. Please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. His remarks came shortly after Minnesota Governor Tim Walz publicly questioned the president's physical and mental fitness during an appearance on NBC's Meet the Press on the same day. Walz said he believed Trump was fading physically, and also criticized what he described as Trump's declining mental capacity. Walz later took to X, formerly Twitter, and urged the president to release the MRI results as evidence of his health status. MRI scans, magnetic resonance imaging, are known for producing highly detailed images of the body's internal structures by using strong magnets and radio waves. They are commonly used to diagnose or monitor a wide range of medical conditions, from joint injuries to neurological concerns. Trump, now 79, had previously acknowledged that he visited Walter Reed National Military Medical Center on October 10th for what he described as his semi-annual physical. He had already received his first physical examination of the year in April. However, despite confirming that an MRI was part of the October evaluation, neither Trump nor the White House had disclosed which part of his body was scanned. The White House did release a brief medical summary following Trump's October visit, describing the appointment as a follow-up examination involving advanced imaging, laboratory testing, and preventative health assessments. The official report maintained that Trump continues to demonstrate excellent overall health, but it did not include any specific details about the MRI findings or the imaging results more broadly. The summary did confirm that Trump received both a flu vaccine and a COVID-19 booster during the appointment. When reporters pressed Trump about the MRI during an Oct. 27 exchange, he confidently reiterated that his doctors were impressed with his health metrics. He claimed they told him he had some of the best reports for the age, some of the best reports they've ever seen. Trump's health has long been the subject of public interest due to the demands of the presidency, his age, and the ongoing political tensions surrounding his leadership. His willingness to release the MRI results, something presidents are not typically required to do, adds another layer to a debate that many expect will intensify as he continues to face scrutiny from political opponents and the media. While the president portrays the MRI as routine and uneventful, critics argue that the lack of clarity about what was examined only fuels speculation. Supporters, however, view his insistence on being transparent as evidence that he has nothing to hide. For now, the White House has not provided a timeline for when the MRI results might be released, nor has it offered additional information about the nature of the scan. The situation continues to draw attention as Trump moves deeper into a political climate where questions about age, stamina, and cognitive ability are becoming increasingly central to public discourse. The engines of Air Force One hummed steadily beneath the floor, a low vibration that carried through the cabin like a heartbeat as President Donald Trump settled into his seat. The sun was setting over the horizon behind them, casting a fading golden glow across the windows as the aircraft sliced through the sky on its return trip to Washington. He had just left Florida after spending Thanksgiving weekend at Mar-a-Lago, surrounded by family, advisors, and the ever-present orbit of reporters waiting for his next move. Yet as the plane gained altitude, he seemed more energized than fatigued, more ready to address controversy than to avoid it. The air inside the cabin was tense, in the way it often became when reporters sensed an opening. A possible, quote, a story waiting to be drawn out. And today, the president handed them exactly that. It began with a question simple, almost tossed in casually by one of the journalists, but it opened the door to something much larger. They wanted to know about the MRI, the one taken in October, the one he and the White House had acknowledged but barely explained. The one that had suddenly become the center of attention after Minnesota Governor Tim Walz accused the president of declining health. It was meant to be a routine inquiry, but routine questions rarely stayed routine around Trump. He leaned back, eyes sharp, and answered with a confidence that almost seemed rehearsed. He said the results were perfect. He repeated the word as if it had a special weight, as though the perfection of the scan had become a personal victory. Then, in his usual fashion, he doubled down, offering to release the results entirely if people wanted them. He spoke as if it were nothing, just another procedural test, but everyone in the room knew it was more than that. It was tied to the constant narrative about his age, his health, his stamina, and now his cognitive state. The reporters exchanged glances. His phrasing was unusual. When he said he had no idea what part of his body had been scanned, it left a ripple of confusion in the room. Presidents rarely make medical claims without precision, yet here he was, brushing off a months-old MRI with the same indifference one might use to describe a routine blood pressure check. "It wasn't the brain," he said enthusiastically, "because I took a cognitive test and I aced it." His voice carried with the same bravado he often used when defending his mental sharpness, as though the cognitive test had become part of his identity, a shield against critics who questioned his fitness. Outside the aircraft's windows, clouds drifted by in endless patterns, but inside the cabin, the conversation was fixed on a single topic: health. It was not a new subject, but it had gained renewed intensity. That morning, Governor Walz had sat across from Chuck Todd on Meet the Press and said that Trump was fading physically. He implied that the president's mental capacity was sliding, that his public appearances raised concerns, and that transparency was necessary. His message did not end on television. Instead, he carried it onto social media, calling for Trump to release the MRI results. The timing was too perfect to ignore. It ensured that by the time Trump stepped aboard Air Force One and faced the press, the question would land squarely at his feet. For years, the health of presidents has been a delicate topic, shielded behind polished reports and controlled disclosures. Yet Trump, at 17-9, had never approached the topic in the traditional way. He was proud of his stamina, boasting often about his energy, his long work hours, his travel schedule. He used every perceived slight about his health as an opportunity to reinforce his vitality. So when critics questioned the MRI, it became more than a medical inquiry. It became political fuel. The reporters pressed deeper. Why the scan? Why the secrecy? What exactly had been examined? Trump explained again that he had gone to Walter Reed on October 10th for what he referred to as his semi-annual physical. The phrase suggested a structured routine, though presidents are not publicly known to undergo 2 full physicals every year. But even with his attempt to frame it as ordinary, the unanswered questions hovered around him. He said he had his first physical in April. This one was simply a follow-up. He presented it as though it were normal, but it deviated from the pattern of previous administrations, and that made it newsworthy. The official White House medical summary released after his October visit only deepened the mystery. It described advanced imaging, laboratory testing, and preventative health assessments. Those words were broad, vague, and open to interpretation. They confirmed activity but not substance. The summary praised him as continuing to demonstrate excellent overall health, but notably left out any mention of the MRI's findings. It mentioned routine vaccines, a flu shot, a COVID-19 booster, but the imaging results remained tucked behind the closed doors of Walter Reed. On October 21st, 27, Trump had spoken briefly about the visit when another swarm of reporters pressed him. Back then, he told them that the doctors had given him some of the best results they'd ever seen for someone his age. It was a characteristic defense, firm, proud, almost triumphant. But his description that day did little to clarify the reason for the MRI. And now, weeks later, the answer was still no clearer. As the conversation continued aboard Air Force One, the reporters felt the duality of the moment. On one hand, they were speaking to a president who claimed complete transparency. On the other, the details remained frustratingly vague. If he truly did not know what part of his body had been scanned, it fueled speculation. Was the test ordered urgently? Was it part of a routine check? Was it related to a condition unmentioned in the official reports? These were the questions silently circulating among journalists, political analysts, and even members of the public. The opacity surrounding the scan made the mystery larger, not smaller.